On May 8, 2024, the Chinese-built naval replenishment ship BRP Lake Caliraya was spotted on the waters between the southern end of Taiwan and the Philippines, approximately 8.5 nautical miles from the Philippine coastal city of Laoag. At the command of the highest-ranking officer, the combined forces of the Philippine and US armies, navies, and air forces, bearing both Philippine and American flags, launched an attack on the enemy ship BRP Lake Caliraya. The vessel was quickly hit by a barrage of anti-ship missiles, rockets, helicopter gunfire, and land-based artillery, catching fire and slowly sinking to the seabed. Military officials and diplomats from 14 countries, including Canada, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, observed this firepower display from a mountain top along the Philippine coast. This event was part of the 3-week joint military exercise between the US and the Philippines called Shoulder to Shoulder, which began on April 22nd and concluded on May 10. The exercise focused primarily on maritime attacks conducted by air forces, navies, and ground artillery, aimed at preventing enemy landings on the Philippine territory. This year's shoulder-to-shoulder exercise took place in northern and western parts of the Philippines, close to the South China Sea. US and Philippine Special Forces also conducted island capture drills on the Batanes Islands, less than 200 kilometers from Taiwan. Overall, the exercises involved 16,000 troops from the participating countries, with France and Australia also taking part. As reported by Radio France Internationale, U.S. Marine Corps Pacific Commander William Journey remarked at the Manila opening ceremony, "We're going to show the people of the Philippines and the world that we've gotten better, and we're never going to stop doing so." The target ship, BRP Lake Caliraya, formerly known as BRP Lapu-Lapu, is a decommissioned Philippine Navy ship built in a Chinese shipyard. The deployment of Chinese-built ships as fictional enemy targets led to significant displeasure and strong reactions from Chinese officials. On May 7, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian urged during a press conference that concerned nations should stop maritime provocations and confrontations. They should instead contribute more positively to regional peace and stability, avoiding what he called self-consoling victories, which is just to make one feel better. Omar Al-Asaf, the chief planner of the exercises, stated that the selection of a Chinese-built vessel as the exercise target carried no symbolic implications. He explained that defending the nation is his duty. It's not targeting any specific people or countries. He also affirmed that, regardless of China's involvement, they would still proceed with these exercises. The exercise is seen as a recent indicator of strengthening defense cooperation between the US and the Philippines, highlighted by a successful live demonstration amid shared concerns about China's activities in disputed Asian territories. Since early 2023, following complaints of territorial infringements, China no longer permitted Filipino vessels to resupply the BRP Sierra Madre and 2nd Thomas Shoal. On December 9, 2023, during a visit to 2nd Thomas Shoal, General Bronner, the Chief of Staff of the Philippine military, inspected the long-beached BRP Sierra Madre. He reported that during this time, the Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia fired water cannons at Philippine supply vessels, severely damaging one engine and deliberately colliding with another supply ship. Spokesperson and Assistant Director General of the Philippine National Security Council, Jonathan Malaya, described these actions at a press briefing as a serious escalation on the part of the agents of the People's Republic of China. On a radio broadcast, General Bronner stated that he was unharmed during the incident, but believed that the Chinese were unaware of his presence on the ship at the time. The Philippines has filed a diplomatic protest with China over its aggressive actions in the South China Sea and has summoned the Chinese ambassador in Manila. According to a Philippine Foreign Affairs official, these actions by the Chinese vessels threaten peace, order, and security. In response, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning stated that China had formally protested the collision to the Philippines, voicing strong opposition. Mao Ning also accused Philippine vessels of disregarding warnings from the Chinese Coast Guard ships, deliberately entering the shoal waters around Second Thomas Shoal, and dangerously colliding with Chinese Coast Guard vessels at the scene. This year, there have been frequent maritime conflicts between China and the Philippines over the Huangyan Island and Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. On March 23rd, the Philippines accused the Chinese Coast Guard of obstructing a Philippine supply ship near a reef within its territorial waters and attacking it with water cannons. The Philippine military reported that the hour-long assault took place near the contested Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. In recent months, there have been several of these incidents where Chinese vessels fired water cannons and collided with Philippine vessels. The Philippine military released video footage showing a white vessel using a water cannon to continuously spray another ship traveling beside it. One clip captured two white vessels simultaneously targeting another ship, confirmed by the Philippine military as the Philippine supply vessel Uniza May 4th, UM4. This vessel had previously been damaged by a water cannon attack from the Chinese Coast Guard in the same area on March 5th, resulting in injuries to 4 crew members. Despite provocations from Chinese military personnel, the Philippines remains firm in its resolve to defend its sovereignty. In April, Philippine President Marcos Jr. declared at a foreign journalist forum, "This country will not lose an inch of its territory. We will continue to uphold our territorial integrity and sovereignty in accordance with our Constitution and with international law. We will work with our neighbors to secure the safety and security of our peoples." On April 11th, leaders from the United States, Japan, and the Philippines held their first trilateral summit, focusing on the Indo-Pacific situation and South China Sea issues. U.S. President Biden affirmed that America's defense commitments to Japan and the Philippines are unbreakable. Recently, China and the Philippines have experienced ongoing conflicts over territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Observers believe that the recent summit was convened to address Beijing's escalating military threat in the region. Biden also stated any attack on Philippine aircraft, vessels, or armed forces in the South China Sea would invoke our Mutual Defense Treaty. President Marcos emphasized that the partnership between the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines is not a short-term arrangement, but a natural evolution of their deepening ties. Voice of America reported that 1 week before joint U.S.-Philippine military exercises, the U.S. deployed the Typhoon missile system with medium-range strike capabilities on Luzon Island in the Philippines. This is the first time since the Cold War that the U.S. has stationed a medium-range missile system in Asia, expected to have significant implications for regional security. The Typhoon system, positioned in northern Luzon, is capable of carrying various missiles. These include the Standard Missile 6 SM-6 with a range of approximately 450 kilometers and the Tomahawk cruise missile, which has a maximum range of 2,500 kilometers. This deployment extends coverage across the Taiwan Strait, Luzon Strait, and most major cities in China's eastern coast, as well as Chinese military bases in the South China Sea and nearby areas. In recent years, sovereignty disputes in the South China Sea between China and the Philippines have intensified. Manila has accused China of targeting Philippine supply ships with powerful water jets, laser sights, and even colliding with Philippine Coast Guard vessels, attracting international concern and prompting U.S. involvement. On May 9, 1999, the Philippine Navy dispatched the aging tank landing ship BRP Sierra Madre to Second Thomas Shoal, claiming the vessel was leaking and needed to be grounded on the northwest side of the shoal. The Chinese government immediately protested this action. Despite multiple negotiations, the Philippines refused to remove the ship and established it as a base, permanently stationing 7 shoulders there in rotating shifts, effectively asserting control over the shoal. On July 12, 2016, the Arbitration Tribunal of the South China Sea Arbitration ruled that Second Thomas Shoal falls within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, affirming Philippine sovereignty over it. However, Chinese authorities rejected this ruling. China is Philippines' largest trading partner and third largest export market, accounting for 20.6% of the Philippines' imports and 13.9% of its exports. The United States and the Philippines have a mutual defense treaty committing to joint action in response to any armed attacks against either's territory or forces in the Pacific. For decades, the Philippines has oscillated between aligning with China and the US, largely due to overlapping territorial claims in the South China Sea, including the Spratly Islands. After its establishment, the People's Republic of China demarcated its territory in the South China Sea with a 9-dash line, claiming all islands within it. The Philippines disputes this claim, maintaining sovereignty over several nearby islands, including Mischief Reef and Scarborough Shoal, most of which are under Chinese control. In 2013, then Philippine President Aquino III appealed to an international tribunal in The Hague to rule on whether China's 9-dash line violates the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. On July 12, 2016, the tribunal found that China's claim to historic rights over resources within the 9-dash line had no legal basis and violated UNCLOS, ordering China to stop its artificial island building in the South China Sea. However, China refused to accept the final ruling of the tribunal. As a result, China-Philippines relations plummeted to a new low. In retaliation, the Chinese government imposed trade sanctions on the Philippines, citing the discovery of pests and banned imports from its 5 major fruit exporters. In June 2016, with the election of President Duterte, Philippines-China relations began to improve, partly due to Duterte's Chinese heritage. His mother was of Chinese descent, and his grandfather was a Chinese Filipino. Upon taking office, Duterte adopted a foreign policy of pivoting away from the US and towards China, demanding the withdrawal of foreign military forces from the Philippines and declaring the 2016 US-Philippines military exercise as the last one. During a visit to China, he announced a separation from the US and showed a willingness to set aside disputes in the South China Sea and even conduct joint military exercises with China and Russia. China then lifted the trade ban. Duterte's administration largely took a passive stance regarding Chinese military vessels, ramming and driving away Filipino fishing boats and occupying reefs and shoals claimed by the Philippines. He hoped his friendly pro-China approach would lead to concessions in the disputed areas. Duterte made several visits to China, emphasizing his family's Chinese ancestry during speeches in Beijing and building a close relationship with Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping. On July 17, 2023, the 78-year-old former President Duterte visited Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping, expressing a desire to continue promoting friendly relations, despite knowing that these ties were on the brink of collapse. On June 30, 2022, Duterte's endorsed successor, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., was elected president of the Philippines, with Chinese Vice President Wang Qishan attending the inauguration as Xi Jinping's special representative. On January 3, 2023, President Marcos Jr. visited China, held talks with Xi Jinping, and both sides issued the joint statement between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of the Philippines. However, unexpectedly, after this meeting, Marcos Jr. turned around and launched Philippines' toughest foreign policy in nearly a decade. He actively sought alliances, revived defense relations with the United States, and prioritized the resolution of territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea. President Marcos Jr. has agreed to establish 5 new military bases for U.S. use, including strategically important locations in Batanes near Taiwan. Concurrently, Washington announced the resumption of joint patrols with the Philippines in South China Sea, which had been suspended for 6 years. Since the Philippines announced its withdrawal from China's Belt and Road Initiative in November last year, the United States and the Philippines have launched a new cooperation project. The project is called Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGII Luzon Corridor. This initiative aims to promote infrastructure developments, including ports, railways, clean energy, and semiconductor supply chains. The PGII offers grants, federal financing, and private sector investment to partner countries. It was initiated in 2021 by the United States and the G7 partners under the name Build Back Better World Partnership. It was considered an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. According to China expert Miles Yu, the democracy wave that began in the 1980s has matured in several Asian countries, which share common values and social systems and view China as a common threat. China's traditional bullying the weak and killing the chicken to scare the monkey diplomatic policies have intensified these countries' alignment with the United States. Following the conflict between China and the Philippines last year, Marcos Jr. visited the Pentagon in the United States. When welcoming the Philippine president, the U.S. Defense Secretary Austin pledged to support the Philippines in the South China Sea or other parts of the region. RFI reports a statement from Chinese affairs expert and senior fellow at the Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs, Alexander Gorlak. He believes that the Philippines' grounding of the Navy transport ship BRP Sierra Madre on Reed Bank in 1999 was a long-simmering assertion of sovereignty. The situation, he warns, could escalate into an armed conflict. Moreover, one of the Philippines' closest allies, the United States, is increasingly involved. Analysts point out that the focus of the dispute is not the islands themselves, which are mostly uninhabitable anyway. The region, however, is rich in fisheries and has significant oil and natural gas reserves. Most importantly, whoever controls the South China Sea controls one of the world's most critical trade routes, through which about 1/3 of the global container traffic flows. Analysts believe that the conflict is complex and not easily resolved. Under Xi Jinping's authoritarian vision, he aims to dominate the Western Pacific, isolating Taiwan and forcing it to join China voluntarily, while pressuring the Philippines to relinquish its claims in the South China Sea. Beijing's increasingly aggressive actions towards the Philippine Coast Guard is testing U.S. patience. With the ongoing crisis in the South China Sea, the United States has established a military and diplomatic security partnership with Australia and the UK, a UK-US. Not only that, it is also engaged in the quadrilateral security dialogue with Japan, India, and Australia, and now long-term security cooperation with the Philippines and Japan. All these actions are perceived as countermeasures against the Chinese Communist Party. Can multilateral security cooperation and military exercises among allies curb the expansionist ambitions of the Chinese Communist Party? Moreover, if Filipino soldiers stationed in the disputed islands are attacked by Chinese military vessels, will the U.S. truly activate the Mutual Defense Treaty and engage in war with Chinese forces? The future will reveal how these scenarios unfold.